Step into the light where the wild ones roam, where the heart speaks loud, calling this place home. We break the rules, we paint the sky, ridiculously you, we were born to fly. Ooh, it's ridiculously you.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Ridiculously You podcast. I am your host, Julie May, and we have really cool guests today. So, what happens when a former chess prodigy, CEO mastermind, serial entrepreneur decides to rebuild the language of self-love from the ground up? You get my guest here, whose name is Kalin. He's the founder of I.gy, a project that's part philosophy, part rebellion, rooted in human connection. He is reframing how we speak, how we show up for our own evolution. We're going to get into a lot of that today because we have a lot of commonality on that. He's got a really cool story, and he's coming to us from clear across the other side of the world today. So that is super exciting too. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and share with them where you're at.
Thanks for having me. I'm Kalin Karakehayov, very complicated last name. I started as a professional chess player, then I was a chess coach, then I started an online business, 2008, great years for this, basically. I made all possible mistakes, but since the rising tide lifts all boats, basically, even my stupidity couldn't get in the way of getting some success. 2014, we turned it into a startup. Now we are 120 people in the startup. The company does the most boring thing ever. It buys and sells domain names. Extremely boring business, but profitable. Of course, being responsible for a company and so many people was a journey of growth. But 4 years ago, I decided that something needs to happen to give back and basically do something that's actually interesting. So I started i.gy, which is it's kind of a framework, an operating system for life. It gives specific language in which to address life and ourselves. Of course, it's founded on the same great pillars that everyone talks about, like self-love and acceptance, and trying to do more stuff and get rid of your fears, do a lot of exposure therapy, and really just don't stop, but just be very acceptant and very compassionate about yourself, but also do stuff all the time. So it's kind of best of both. And the thing I realized is that I'm a big fan of a lot of self-help authors and creators, but they all talk in a bit of a different language, use different words. And I realized that the language is probably the reason why a lot of the good content doesn't really vibe with people. So I decided, okay, let's try to create a language, a framework that we can use to talk about life. And maybe this can help people really build an intuition about themselves and life.
What brought you to language? I mean, you're there in Bulgaria. I'm sure English isn't your first language. How many languages do you speak?
Only Bulgarian and English. But when I say language, I mean just any language, because all the languages evolved a long time ago when the life was much simpler. So one of the core theories of i.gy is that very complicated words words like work or business or relationship, that the modern world puts so much into these words that basically when we hear or read this word, so many neurons fire that the brain just blocks, decides, okay, this is too complicated. My main job as a brain is to not go crazy. So I just shut down this process and basically restart the thought process. So people never manage to build intuition and depth about those words. I was so fascinated. How can people be so irrational about work, about finding a good job and keeping it, and like advancing, no matter in a company or entrepreneur, how they can keep a very bad job for years when they have better options. All of this was always fascinating for me. And now I realize that people just don't have a concept of work in their minds. It's this complex exchange of money and appreciation and education and experience back and forth between the employee and the employer. And if you jumble all of this into one word, it just becomes meaningless, too complicated for a single word. So basically in I Grow Younger, we break stuff down when the word is too complicated, or where a word doesn't exist, we define it with just some phrase. The first time that I realized this is that I just got a notebook and a blank page on the notebook 4 years ago, and I was just, okay, let's like try to draw life on a single page in the notebook. And my first instinct, which I later heard was typical for like cognitive behavioral therapy and other approaches to therapy, is just to draw a big line down the middle and divide everything into your internal experience and the real world, because
Right.
the internal experience requires that you be very compassionate and acceptant, and to basically know that you have so many closed loops inside, there's so much recursion going on, that there's a lot of fake it till you make it. Basically, you just need to imagine a better life in order to have it in many cases, if it's internal. While if it's external, it's the complete opposite. You need to stay in touch with reality and don't get away from this. So you need two different approaches. And I was like, why don't we have words for this? Basically, life has two parts that require different approaches, but we somehow don't have even words for this part. So how do we expect humans to see the world and themselves in this way? And I just called them the game of self and the game of life, and that was it. That started like defining new stuff.
I love that, because a lot of times, like one word, like you say the word work, right? It's complicated, but it's also we see that through a filter of trauma and a filter of what our life experience is, and all these little filters that we see that one word with. And if you can break it down into something that isn't that word particularly, then it doesn't go through that filter of, all of our traumas and things that frame how we feel or behave around that word. So if we take the word work, what would you say instead of the word work, to reframe that into a different language, into words that our brain aren't going to have a big freak out about?
Basically, in I Grow Younger, we like to portray anything that is ongoing in time as flows. So
Mm-hmm.
you have work is just an exchange of flows. So you get a flow of money, but you give a flow of labor. And if like the flow of money is not increasing while your flow of labor is increasing, then maybe you should talk to your employer to raise your salary or like decrease your hours to do something. So uh, having a good match of flows in any two-way relationship is very important. But also every two-way relationship, like romantic or work or whatever, it always ends up either as a race to the top or as a race to the bottom. Either trust and other very important metrics, either they increase and then it's a race to the top, or they decrease and then it's a race to the bottom. So with work, it's the same. I have seen with many of my employees, if I give them good support, they give more effort, and then I trust them more and they grow and they do better work, and I give them more important tasks. So it's a race to the top. But sometimes I'm too busy and I forget someone for a few months. And sometimes very good people still manage to grow, but most people without support will just start the race to the bottom. They will be less motivated. The work quality will decline. Then I give them less important tasks. Then they get disappointed, and the work quality declines even more, and it's a race to the bottom. So in this framework, it's very important to give a bit before you start like looking for reciprocity, because sometimes it can still become a race to the top. Like
Mm-hmm.
the beginning is not so important, because if it starts as a race to the bottom, but then you manage to reverse it by doing something that is just one-way flow, then you can still make it a race to the top.
So you talk about this flow and this race to the top in a I'm the boss and you're the boss, I'm the employee kind of a situation. How does that work? And you talk about like that external motivation. How does that work for somebody who's an entrepreneur who needs to race to the top, but doesn't necessarily have a boss or somebody else telling them to race to the top or motivating them to do that?
That's tricky. Like being an entrepreneur can be quite lonely. I'm a big anti-fan of business partners. So I think having a business partner is super hard choice to make, unless like you absolutely like love and trust the person. It's not the right choice, because business partnership is like a marriage, but like if you get divorced, the business dies. So
Yeah.
so I really recommend that people start the business alone, and then maybe the business partner will come along the way. But I, of course, know that then it's a very lonely journey, because the business partner is providing not only knowledge and resources and money, but also emotional support. Like, you're not alone. That's a reason why many entrepreneurs take a business partner. They just need the emotional support. They cannot imagine doing this alone. But actually, you can try alone. And this, of course, requires that you have a very good level of self-love. Self-love is, of course, critical to everything in life. It's just the center, connected to everything. So basically, you need self-love as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you eventually do some stupid stuff and get into a downward spiral. With self-love, it's interesting that it's a relationship with yourself. So again, you have the race to the top or to the bottom, because it's yourself and yourself. The problem with self-love is that if you do something that you later regret, that's the moment while you have the most need of self-love. You need it the most, but you deserve it the least in this moment. So basically, if your framework of life is that everything needs to be deserved, it's just the end there. You go into these downward spirals, and people who are sometimes not because of trauma or anything hard, but just brought by very well-meaning parents who tell them, okay, you have to you have to be very honest, and everything in life has to be deserved, and there's no free lunches. These people often have a problem with self-love. And if you have a problem with self-love, you have a problem as an entrepreneur, because when times are bad, you will need the self-love. Otherwise, it will just be mental blocks and race to the bottom with yourself. So that has been tough for me in some moments in the past.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I teach a lot on self-love, and it's one of those things that I go, motivation can only get you so far, especially like external motivation. It can get you a little bit, but if you're always relying on somebody else to like move you or get you to the next part, you're going to struggle a little bit, especially as an entrepreneur. But if you can come from self-love, this is one of the things I like to say all the time. I like to reframe things in more of, I am the kind of person who does that. Like, I am the kind of person who nourishes my body well because it supports me. And when I say that, it's not a shame, blame, guilt. It's not somebody external saying that I need to do this or I should do this or whatever. Shoulds get in trouble sometimes, but when it's just for me, because I love myself, one of the boundaries and rules I have placed for myself, I've decided I am the kind of person who does this. I am the kind of person who shows up this way. I am the kind of person who loves myself even when I trip and fall and do something stupid, right?
Yeah,
When
so
we can come from that kind of thing, and I think with entrepreneurship too, like, you have to start framing it in a way that you're going to fail, because if you don't ever fail, you didn't really try very hard, because there are lots of things that you can fail at. And if you can go, I am going to learn from that experience and come out even better the next time, whatever it is that looks like a failure to you, if you can take that as a, man, I learned so much from that, and now I know this, and now I know that, and I'm going to come out better next time, then it's almost like failure doesn't even become a word in your language anymore. It's like, well, I saw ways that it wasn't going to work, and I saw ways that it was going to work.
yes, what I'd say from my experience as an entrepreneur is just fail fast and fail small. Like, if you have a 3-year failure, then it's just a big loss of resources. You learned a lot, surely, but in the end, the resources, money, like motivation and drive is also sometimes a finite resource. You can just get tired if you work too hard. So about self-love, I was really striving to like define it to myself for a long time, and then I like defined it as just lack of any internal barriers, so feeling as one whole. And then you get these stages where you can be like, at the worst possible point, you hate your whole life, then you hate parts of your life, then you dislike parts of your life, then you like neutral about some parts of your life but positive about others, and then you're positive about your whole life but like in different amplitudes, and then you are positive about everything in your life, and then you're positive about everything in your life like equally, and then just all of the compartments disappear, and just you see your life as one whole. So that's the journey that you can go. And the thing is that many people get a bit trapped somewhere in the middle. So like, okay, they don't hate themselves anymore, which is huge progress, and a lot of people will just dream every day to be there, but then you can just love yourself more. So this is a never-ending journey.
Yeah. When have you been in one of those lower spots where you just like, I don't like myself, I don't like my journey, I don't like what's happening? Can you remember a time where you were in that kind of a place, and tell us what helped you get out of that?
Yeah, sure. Like I grew up, my family moved to Denmark for 2 years. So from my first 4 years in school, I changed 4 different schools, and it was slower for me to get friends, and also all of the problems with men and boys not opening up and not having like real connections and not sharing. Like I was like the poster kid for that. I could never open up to anyone until like in my late teenage years, and because of this I didn't have enough like deep human connection and sharing, and this was hard for me. Like I had good things in my life, I had like decent family, like healthy mom and pop love each other and everything like that, but like with not being open to the world is and to people, and not being to like be able to express love for girls, and just not being able to express in general was a big problem. I had some relatively healthy coping where I was just going in nature and even getting lost in nature, in forest. This was really like healing for this, because it gave me some flows and prevented like overthinking and like bad coping.
Yeah.
But I had periods from when I was 18 to when I was 21 or something, where like the girl I had a crush on always like started dating my best friend or something, and it was like 3 or 4 times in a row. Then I had a very
Oh,
bad
geez.
period with chess, where I had a lot of bad results in a row. So I had times where I didn't hate myself, but I hated like parts of myself, parts of my life. Like I wouldn't say I was super destructive to myself, because after all, I didn't like do anything that was really destructive to myself. But there were tough times. I had like something like a mildly depressive period for 6 months when I was 18. Um, and yeah, there was a lot of anxiety in my teenage years, which I suppose is normal. But for me, it was like for extremely stupid stuff, like will I get chosen in school to get to the blackboard and solve math puzzles? Stupid stuff. Like the most stupid stuff made me the most anxious for some reason, because I just didn't know how to handle it, and it accumulated in me. For stupid stuff accumulated in me and caused a lot of anxiety. So yeah, I've been through a lot, but always try to cope healthy. And then when I was 22, there was a major change in my life, which is for the first time I fell in love, like for real, like not attraction and crushes, but like real love. And the girl, it was not mutual, like we were just friends, but the girl was just such an amazing person that I basically rewired my whole brain for not in years or months, but it was in weeks. I can say even days, but like days will be it started in days, but then kind of finished in weeks or months. And because basically, apparently, your brain on love becomes so plastic that you can just change your whole identity and stories about yourself and everything. But this was the key moment, because until then, I had all of the stupid things in me that bring people down. I was all about status and performance and all of these things that people try to replace self-love and real unconditional love with. And then I saw this girl who was this amazing, kind person. I was like, everything I care about is shit, and I need to just throw it out.
Yeah.
And basically rebuild my identity from scratch, because people like her exist, and she lives life the way I would like to live it. So yeah.
Isn't that wild? Just having that experience of being, I call it being at the frequency of love. I always say like healing happens at the frequency of love, because love is like when you're at that vibrational frequency, that's when all the change happens and your brain is more plastic and all of these things happen. You, and I find it interesting too that it wasn't like a reciprocal love. So it wasn't like she didn't fall in love with you. Is that the end of the story? You fell in love with her and you didn't end up together?
No, we didn't. Actually, one-sided love is the most underappreciated like thing that
Oh,
can happen to
that's
you.
so cool.
It's extreme. Like the bad thing is that all of the culture is telling you that you're a loser. But if you just stop listening and uh, first, of course, if it's like if it's not shared, if the person doesn't know uh, that you love her or him, then that's tough, because then you end up not being yourself in front of this person,
Oh yeah,
and not being yourself is always bad. But
exactly.
if you know and she knows, then you can be friends, and this friendship can have, like, for her it maybe just be the normal friendship, good friendship, but for you the depth of this friendship is life changing. And because it's like friendship and communication, talking, uh, strong emotions, and then this person becomes a part of you in a way. And if it's a really good person, it just literally improves you, like it imprints all of their good qualities on you. And people who try to build good qualities like for years, if they fell in love, and especially if it's one-sided, you can copy those for weeks. Like copy is a not the prettiest word, but that's exactly what I feel is happening. Just her qualities becoming mine, because I have like the image of her with me all the time. So then basically everything I love about her kind of is in me all the time, and it becomes part of me very, very quickly. So one-sided love is just extremely underappreciated. I also have another theory, which is
Okay,
that
go, because that's so fascinating to me. I'm like, oh, I've never heard it explained that way. That's so beautiful. I love it.
the other theory is like that I'm not sure this may be valid mostly for men, but it goes like this. So men have energy. 30% of the male energy is somehow dedicated only to sex. Like the example that I give is, okay, give a man to run like 20 kilometers, and he will run 20 kilometers and like collapse exhausted. And then you
Mhm.
tell him that after another 10 kilometers, there's a beautiful lady waiting, ready to have sex. And you see the male magically getting up power to run another 10 kilometers. So there's a kind of a 30% of energy dedicated somehow in men to mating. I think
Mm.
it's something about how testosterone works, but I maybe a bit of this is also true about women. Not sure, because I'm not a woman. But in the cases of real, very like unconditional, one-sided love that is much more like love than attraction, which was the case with me most of the times, it's very interesting. But somehow the barrier between those 70% of normal energy and those 30% of energy dedicated to melting, it somehow melts, and you can assess those 30% of energy, because like you know that right now you will not mate, and somehow the brain and the body, they decide that, okay, we can use this for other purposes, and you get so much energy, so much creativity. That this was the moments that I created companies, that I created projects, that I thought out of new concepts, were mostly when I had one-sided love. And why does it has to be one-sided? Because if it's mutual, then you consume the love, and these 30% are actually for sex and mating.
Hmm.
So
So
one-sided,
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm in a rather newish relationship right now. We've been dating like 5 months, and we're kind of at that Twitter pated, the other person's the most magical person on the planet land, right?
Oh,
And it's the best. But we've both said, I think I'm more productive now than I've ever been before because like we're motivated to be productive. Like the other, we want to spend so much time with the other person. We want to build a life with the other person. Like, and we're both working harder, being more innovative, like doing our very best work in this last couple of months. And we're like, I feel like it's related. But like, let's say that's this whole love period, right? This whole I love somebody, I've seen them, I have a mutual love, I have a one-sided love. But what if somebody's in this place where they're feeling pretty crappy about themselves? Things are not going well. They have no love prospects. What advice would you give to that person? Because they're probably out there thinking, well, yeah, you have this beautiful, lovely person. You're in love. Of course that's fine. I have nobody, you know. What do you say to that person?
Well, I think that there are four very powerful flows. We call them flows in I Grow Younger, which is the flow is basically something that touches your whole life. It's a part of you, just like self-love. We have self-love, we have unconditional love, we have meaning, and we have responsibility. So basically, each flow destroys some barrier. Self-love destroys the barriers within you, unconditional love, the barriers to other people, meaning the other barriers. You see the world as one, you see your work, your creative work, touching people you never meet, and this has meaning to you. And then responsibility is destroying the barriers between you and your actions, so your effect on the world. So these are the four things that you can never overdo, basically, because the best will be to have no barriers. So if these flows are infinitely strong, it means zero barriers. And then you have a fifth kind of a flow, which is freedom. If you have freedom, then you have space for these flows. And then you have potentially a sixth one, which is scale, impact. So how much can you give to the world? How much can you help people? So these are the six things that you cannot really overdo. And the interesting thing is that if you maximize those, everything in your life somehow falls into place and you don't need to care about all of the other spectrums. Let's say you have the spectrum of how much pizza I eat today, like
Mm-hmm.
too little, I be hungry, too much, like not cool. And people are thinking about, okay, do I eat 4 or 5 slices of pizza? And they have thousands of these spectrums. But if you had self-love, unconditional love, meaning, responsibility, and freedom and scale, you would eat the right amount of pizzas for you to feel well. You wouldn't need to care how much pizza you should eat. And the same with everything. So then life becomes so much simpler. You don't need to think, like basically logic can then leave your life. You can just become purely intuitive, because your intuition will have to only take care of these 6 things. And that's easy in any given moment. So I call this the amplitude model, because then you just try to raise the amplitude of these things to have more love, more self-love, more freedom, more of everything. And the broken model I call the Goldilocks model. But the reason that the Goldilocks model is relevant and everyone is telling you should have not too much of this, but not too little, and so on, is that because if we accept the amplitude model, this makes life so simple that then you make every cultural, ideological, and religious movement useless, because then you wouldn't need them. You just have basically 10 lines and you live life by them, and that's it. So basically, all of the evolutionary and cultural wars about which ideas are good and bad, they all have only one thing in common. They all say life is complicated. Because if they
Yes.
say life is simple, they become useless. So there's an enormous amount of historical and cultural pressure to see life as complicated, which is, I think, one of the main things that gets in the way of a modern person. Of course, historically, the amplitude model was impossible because, first of all, like women, minorities, and many other groups were not able to have complete freedom to be themselves completely, and then it didn't hold for them. But now, in most Western countries, we are materially satisfied. We have basic human rights, and now we can embrace the amplitude model, and we don't have to cling to this Goldilocks model. But of course, all of the cultural trends are trying to cling us to the Goldilocks model. And if you have all of these flows, then Of course, everything in your life is good. So the question becomes, if you don't have them, if you're not in love, if you don't feel self-love, if you don't feel meaning in your life, where do you start? Well, what's the opposite of flows? It's boxes, the barriers. And you have barriers in you, but there are also boxes in the world. Like if your work requires looking at Excel sheets all day, it's just boxes. It will be harder to do this work creatively and so on. So in I Grow Younger, we have recommended experiences about how to remove boxes in your life and make room for flows, because flows are uncreatable. You cannot create life, you can only open space for it. So how do you remove boxes in your life? Like how do you ditch your phone? Because the phone is basically right now the biggest problem for the flows, because the phone is a box with endless boxes inside, so it just kills your flows. It doesn't just kill you with the dopamine hits, but also with its very structure. It's very boxy. So one problem is the dopamine, and the other problem is that all of these boxes engage mostly the left hemisphere and of the brain, and become so dominant over the right hemisphere that which gets the flows mostly, that you just cannot reverse this. Also, the educational system is very boxy, and a lot of the things in culture. So, and of course, a lot of the people's coping mechanisms, they are all boxes, right? Because they are structures for you not to fall apart. So in this situation, what is the cheat code? Like, what can you do to get flows, to get rid of boxes? And when I was thinking about this, I went back to my teenage years when I didn't have flows, I didn't have self-love, I didn't have unconditional love, I didn't have meaning. And I asked, like, what saved me? Like, why didn't I fall apart as a person? And the answer was nature. And I remembered what I did in nature. What I did was just go into forests of places that were not dangerous in any way, and then just left the paths and just did straight like beelines in the forest through very rough terrain. Just did adventures in the forest, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends, and this was really, really healing for me. And this was the thing that basically healed and saved me when I didn't have the flows. And then I wondered, like, what is the forest? Well, in the forest, you go, you have some paths, but when you leave the paths, there are no boxes. You cut your cord with civilization, and this allows your other hemisphere of the brain to get flows. And when you get flows, you weaken the boxes, and then you get closer to these things that you need, like self-love and unconditional love and meaning. So basically, if you find a box that has no boxes inside, but only flows, then you cheat the system. So this is why people go to sport. Sport is a box, like you go to a certain place at a certain time, but then you do something nice, like play tennis, which is a flow, or play soccer, which is a flow, or other people go out, they dance, which is a flow, but again, it comes from a box. You can plan it. You go to a certain place at a certain time to dance, or you can go hang out with friends, which is also a flow. So the boxes that contain no other boxes are actually all of the healthy coping, and the most healthy one is nature, because in nature, especially if you do that, like low adrenaline stuff like getting lost a bit, it's super good.
Yeah, I love nature. I used to live in Utah, which is surrounded by mountains and lakes and like waterfalls everywhere. And so it was really easy. Like there was 5 hiking trails within like a half-minute walk of my house. So it was
So
very,
nice.
very nice. So I'm out in nature pretty much every single day. I think it's like required for my well-being, and I would recommend it for everyone else too. Okay. Are you ready for like a quick lightning round? I want to ask you a whole bunch of things. Give me just a couple of word answers, okay?
Sure.
What's your idea of a fun night? If you want to get into flow, you're having fun with your friends, what are you going to do?
I love talking. Like, I like nothing more than talking to friends.
I love that. So, where are you going to go to talk to friends? Are they going to come to your house? Are you going to go out to a bar together? What are you going to do?
I like parties at home, like just a bunch of friends gathering at home, but I can also go out or go to a park or somewhere.
Cool. What is your favorite thing to wear? Is there anything, piece of clothing that you wear that makes you feel happy, joyous, more powerful? It's like your favorite piece of clothing.
I like wearing extremely comfortable clothes, so t-shirts, shorts, but I also like shoes that have such thin soles that you feel the ground, so you can feel your balance. This is a very powerful feeling because I love
Oh,
this.
like the barefoot shoes? I love those.
And not like extremely barefoot, but just very thin and very flat.
Cool. I love that. What does joy feel like in your body? How do you know you're joyful? What does it feel like to you?
Oh, like I'm gonna give a very honest answer, but it's kind of dark. So
Okay.
like if like you're feeling super hyped up and nice, and then you remember that you're gonna die one day, and this thought is like not disturbing at least, then you have true joy, like a true flow.
Okay.
So,
You're like, I'm
of
feeling
course,
really
I'm not feeling this all the time, but I have spotted that this thought of dying not just cause me like any inconvenience when I feel true joy.
I love it. Great answer. Okay.
It's the honest answer. Yeah, that's how I know for real.
Okay. What's a weird thing you like to do that other people might not understand?
Getting lost in the mountains, especially in places with really rough terrain, is something that I enjoy like enormously. But other people would like the thought of going through grass and swamps and going over or under fallen trees and stuff like this and getting like scratched all over. I think most people don't enjoy this as much as I do.
So you're still playing out there like you're a kid. You're climbing stuff, you're getting scratched, you're falling. That's so much fun. Okay, Kalin, tell people where they can find you. If they want to hear more about you, more about your work, where can they find you?
I Grow Younger is online at i.gy as text, and I Grow Younger in YouTube. And I have the luck of having an extremely unique name. No one else in the world is called Kalin Karakehayov. So you can just copy this from the description and find me like everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, everywhere.
Cool. We'll put that in the description so you guys have all the links and everything readily available to you. I love your unique perspective. I love your use of language and rewording things to make it so that people can get past those barriers in their brains or those boxes in their brains so that they can at least get to a flow with these words and understand, and reframing how to do all of that. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, coming all the way from across the world so that people can hear more about you. I so appreciate you. This has been the Ridiculously You podcast, and I'm Julie May, and I'll see you next time.
Share the spark, take it higher. Hit subscribe, bring a friend. Let the wildness never end.